Welcome everyone to Every Woman Empowered's Chick Chit Chat. And I am your host, Shauna J. Cerniak, the founder of Every Woman Empowered. And my co-hosts,
Jani Galarno, international artist and resident artist for Every Woman Empowered.
Mila Janu, certified laughter yoga instructor, founder of Let's Laugh Yig, and happiness ambassador for Every Woman Empowered.
And today, our special guest is a Canadian sportscaster for Sportsnet, Jean Principe. Welcome, Jean.
Hey, ladies, good morning. This is a first. I don't get interviewed that often, and I definitely have not been interviewed by three empowered ladies, so I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you, Jean. Well, welcome aboard. I was kind of hoping that you would have mustered up the courage to wear your hot dog outfit today, but unfortunately, I guess you just couldn't relish it, hey?
Yeah, maybe if we catch up another time, I'll have it on.
Sounds good. That was a quick one. Impressive.
Woo, that's impressive.
On it.
Oh, so Jane, obviously you are the king of puns, and really, truly, that's what we love about you. I mean, my household is a very punny family too. So, what has been your favorite pun so far?
Oh boy, well, two come to mind, maybe because they're a little bit, normally my stuff certainly would not be considered risque, but there's two that are, that I think about. One was many years ago, and now I have to clarify, this is probably something I could not say now on TV. Just things have really changed in the world for the better, but just sometimes some things that maybe we could get away with in the past, not so much now. There was a player named Jack Johnson who was a defenseman with the LA Kings, and he had gone out and practiced football with the University of Southern California, USC Trojans. And so he was playing quarterback, and I said something to the effect that he was playing quarterback, but the Trojans were protecting him. So that's one which I know I couldn't say now, and actually I'm kind of glad I couldn't say it now. My kids are much older, and they might actually understand it. The other one was Dustin Penner, who played with the Oilers, but after he left the Oilers, he hurt his back one day, and he explained that he hurt his back reaching for pancakes that his wife had made, and I referenced how that had happened, and he had a tough time coming back, and he hadn't played very well. He basically craped the bed. So those would be two that come to mind, kind of off the top of my head.
Those are pretty good.
So, Jean, I reached out to the Edmonton Oilers fan group on Facebook, and that's some treacherous waters sometimes. But I asked them what they wanted to ask you. So, Curtis wants to know, where did you learn to pun, or was it in your genes?
Good one. You know what? A combination. I think it was there, but wasn't used. The story goes back to 2006 when the Oilers made it all the way to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final and then lost. And the next season, Chris Pronger wasn't here, and they had injuries, and it was just a real treacherous finish to the season. They only won 2 of their last 20 games. I'm an Edmontonian, and I always feel like I'm generally the first person you see when the game comes on TV. And I wanted to give a sort of a positive, entertaining, just a good feel when you start a game, as opposed to saying, oh, they've lost 5 in a row, or they've allowed this many goals per game. So it kind of started out of that. Personally speaking, as an Oilers fan, I grew up in Edmonton, I was like, okay, these results are kind of getting me down. And if I'm down and that's the way I start a game, that's not really the way it should happen. So I think that was kind of the push to go, okay, let's find some positives and let's work off those positives. And so positives turned into puns, turned into props, and here we are almost 15 years later, and still doing them. But that was kind of the background on how it got started.
I love that. Go ahead, Shauna.
No, that's okay. That's Jani. She just keeps going.
Oh, okay. Well, I've noticed a lot of hockey players have this. So when my friend found out that I was interviewing you today, all they had to say was one thing: mullet or no mullet.
Yeah, I know,
The big debate.
Yeah, you know what? I am waiting for a call. Generally, what happens is, for many years, I kind of kept my hair shorter, unlike back in the 80s when, well, it kind of looked like this. And then the last few years, actually, Jack Michaels, who's the Oilers radio network play-by-play guy, he said, I'm going to let my hair go. I'm not going to cut it all year. And that was about 5 years ago, I would say. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do the same thing. Now, being on TV is a little bit different. And I kind of went as far as I could. And then I'd get an email or a call saying, hey, you know what, do you mind cutting your hair? No problem. No problem. I get it. So here we are. My plan was to go all season without cutting my hair. But the season never ended. It just went on pause. So now we're starting up again, and I haven't cut my hair, and I have yet to see an email or receive a call. I am on standby because I think it might be on its way, but until then, I'll just kind of keep growing it. I like it more than I thought. Short hair is great, right? You wet it a bit. It's easy to carry, easy to maintain. I go through a ton of product, and sometimes too much, and it's just kind of packed on, but you sort of have to in order to keep it, especially it's been pretty windy in Edmonton, to keep it sort of all in shape. So that's kind of the history on it. So for now, the mullet stays. I'm no Ryan Smith, but for now I'm going to keep it and wait for someone to say otherwise. And if no one does, then I'll keep it till October, till the season's over, and then boom, I'll get it shaved down.
Well, maybe it's like the playoff beard. Maybe it'd be a jinx to take it off at this point, right?
Well, I do agree with you. I'm not overly superstitious, but I am somewhat superstitious, and I feel like I need to keep it. And Edmonton is in the playoffs, and it's the team I cover and the city I grew up in. So I get that when players say, I'm on a hot streak and I'm not cutting my hair, or I'm not changing the way I tape my stick, or just all those little things that maybe don't really matter physically, but sort of psychologically and mentally, they can make a difference. So that's the approach I'm taking with my hair. But it's not that important. Like, it's not going to make, I don't think, a difference for Connor and Leon and Nuge. But for me, I'm hoping it does.
I'm just
might throw them off their game.
Yeah, I'm just amazed that there's such a debate over your hair and so much thought. There's, you're waiting for an email, the product. Yeah. I mean, there's just a whole new level going on top of your head,
Yeah, you know what? You're right. I think in the day and age of social media, and PVRs and taping everything and looking back so quickly. In the old days, VCR, you'd have to tape it, it'd have to run, you rewind. Now people stop, rewind, and see something within seconds. But I think social media has been the thing that's given it life. Maybe more life than certainly it's worth. But I do like it when it's hot. You're kind of wishing you had that shortcut, the number 1 or the number 2 sort of. But it's part of me, and I used to have it a long time ago. So now I've just brought it back.
Well, Aaron wants to know what's in your hair.
Lots. I wear a ton. Yeah, I wear a ton of product. Every day I'm like, okay, don't put too much in your hand, and I always end up putting too much and kind of swiping it through and sort of filtering it out, and then I go, you know what, like now it doesn't feel so bad, but when I directly put the product in, it just lasts. But I'm just kind of nervous that if I don't put too much in, it'll just start going all over the place. So that's why I put as much gel in my hair as I do. I don't use, like, my kids, or sometimes I'm caught without like that real gel, and my kids have suggested sort of some mousse, or my wife some hairspray. I don't find that for me that does the trick. I'm not comfortable with it, so it's just packing on the gel, and that's the way I approach it.
Wow. There's I'm amazed. You probably do more work to your hair than I do to mine.
That's probably not a good sign for me.
Oh, well.
I mean, I understand, Jean. I have actually extremely curly hair, so when I wake up every morning, I look like Medusa.
Yes, and that's what my buddies used to call me when they used to call me like Snakes and Medusa when I was like 15, 16, and I have to admit, I don't even know if they had gel back, 35, 40 years ago. If they did, I wasn't using it. My hair was all over the place. And that's what, especially after soccer practice, it would just be a mess. And they would say, hey, Medusa, you know, control those snakes, right? So I hear you.
And that's natural curl. That's all natural?
Yes. Yeah, all natural curl. My wife has really curly hair as well, but her, you know, she can use a straightener and she can make it, you know, straight. I can't. This is kind of what it is and how it is. My two boys have curly hair. My daughter has curly hair. So everybody in the family has it.
Wow. Well, there you go, ladies. We all know about his hair now. It's like
too much information.
So I'm actually going to ask you something that's a little bit more serious.
Sure.
So my husband read somewhere that your dream was to become a professional soccer player. Part of that is, do you still play soccer? And then the other part of that is, so how did your professional path steer you towards hockey instead?
Yeah, and that's true. Your husband read correctly. When I was growing up, soccer, I played soccer and hockey and played, you know, volleyball and basketball in junior high at school. But soccer was, you know, number one, not by a lot, but over hockey. Maybe it's just my Italian heritage and my Italian roots and background. So my dream was to be a professional soccer player. And I was about 15, and I was trying out for the under-16 provincial soccer team. And back in so that would have been like 1982, 83, somewhere in there. And we didn't have the indoor facilities that so many cities have now. We just trained in the gym at Commonwealth Stadium. And as I say, it wasn't the first cut, but I also wasn't the last cut. So I was let go from the team, and I was really disappointed. And I thought, well, you know, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, if you can't play sports, it would be fun to cover sports. And so I was around that age where I'd always loved sports and still do. And I thought maybe it could turn into a career. So I decided that was the path I was going to try and take. And I was in high school at the time at St. Joseph's High School. And then I went to NAIT and took broadcasting. And it just sort of evolved from there. You know, 33 years later, here I am. I guess I owe that coach some credit for cutting me from the team, because even if I made the team, I don't think I was going to end up being a pro. Right. So he maybe let me down easy early, and I was able to kind of channel my energy into a different direction. So, and I still, I'm involved, coach my daughter's team. I refereed for a long time and still like to play. So it's still a big part of my life, soccer. But hockey is a big part of my professional life. And that's what I do basically 10 months of the year, from training camp through regular season, playoffs, draft, July 1st, unrestricted free agency. That's been great. I mean, we're in Canada and soccer is big, but hockey is king. And so for me to latch on to hockey as a way to make a living and to have a career, and I loved hockey too. I just thought that I could never really skate that well, so it was easier for me to run and play soccer. And so one kind of led me to the other. I love still, you know, watching soccer and getting a chance to be involved in games or matches. So it's really worked out great, both from a professional and personal side, to be attached to those two sports mainly. I do like other sports, but those are definitely the top two.
Well, with you being on the road so much, I mean, with hockey, that must be really hard. I mean, you have a family, you have a wife, you have children. Has that been a hard transition on your family, or are they used to it by now, I'd imagine?
Yeah, I think both. I think, you know, when people would often ask me, you know, what's the best part of your job and the worst part of your job? And a lot of times it was travel, you know, best part. I mean, I've been all over North America. I've been to England. I've been to Dubai. I've been to Poland and Germany and Switzerland on some of these lockout tours back in 2004 or 2005 when the NHL was on lockout. I had a chance to go overseas with a bunch of players. So, you know, it's been great, but all of those places don't include my family.
Right.
And so the kids now are 17, 19, 21, so it's a bit different. No one's rushing to the door anymore to meet you. The dog maybe, but that's about it. Sometimes they're like, oh, I didn't know you were gone, you know. So, and I think part of that's true, part of that's not. So those definitely, I missed a lot of, first steps and Christmas concerts and soccer games and sporting events and, tons of stuff that just came with it. And I think the most difficult part was my daughter, who's 19 now. And, when she was about 11 or 12, she used to say, can you give me a week heads up when you're going out of town so I can just get ready for it, And it was tough, she would be crying and say, why do you have to do this? And really, I didn't have to, but it was my career and what I did. And so there were some really difficult departures, but the night before was always the worst because it was tough on me and tough on them. But as soon as I left, then I knew the clock was ticking on the trip and that I'm on my way and the time is already less than what it was the night before I left. So that's how we would do it. I've had some long trips. I think the longest I went to London for the Olympics in 2012. And that was just short of 4 weeks. So it was and that was a real tough one, but it was nice to come home and they were happy to see me. But I'm happy when they don't miss me as much as they did when they were little.
Right.
I remember once I had to leave for a playoff series 2003 and my son was 4 and he's like, are you leaving forever? And I'm like, no, that's not the plan. The plan is for me to leave for this next playoff series. So, even thinking about and talking about it makes me think of how difficult it was. But, I was going to incredible cities. Once you got there, you tried to enjoy what you were doing and where you were, because there was no sense just pouting and sitting in a room, right? That didn't help. And my wife has been incredible, so supportive, never made me feel guilty or bad about where I was and where she was and what she was dealing with. So that helped a lot.
Yeah, having that family support, especially from your wife, that just makes things a lot easier versus being put to task every time and
yes
such.
I've seen that a lot, and I understand it because the person is back home and dealing with a lot, but it just sucks the life out of the person who's away, and they're away no matter what. So hopefully you want not to have too much fun,
right,
but you want them to enjoy their surroundings and where they are.
Right. Well, good for you and good for Karen and the kids. I mean, that's amazing. I love that, and that's that family support. Do you guys what do you do on your downtime? And do you do a lot as a family? I guess as your kids are getting older, probably not so much to be cool to hang out with mom and dad. So
yeah, a little bit less than we used to, but certainly family vacations and I try and get the kids out. I like to ride bikes. We have a basketball net. We went and played tennis on Saturday with my 2 boys. It is a little bit different. I remember when they were kids. And we live in a cul-de-sac, and I mean, we were outside this time of the year till 10:30, and it was always a chore to drag them in. And now I think sometimes it's a chore to drag them out. They sleep in, they get up. My boys are playing games. My daughter will sleep a bit more on their phones. A lot of the things that young people do. They've started getting jobs, which takes away time as well. So yeah, what we've done the last 2 summers actually is we've made a kind of a top 10 list, 10 things you want to do this summer. And you try and get through all of them. And without telling them, many of them are family related or connected. Could be simple as, go out for breakfast as a family,
right,
go for a hike, bike ride in the river valley. I put down, I want to have the biggest milkshake I can find, like just stuff that is what you want to do. And we all make our list. And then like last year, I got to 7 or 8 of the 10 things. So it's another way as they get older of kind of bonding, and many of the things are family related, or at least 3 or 4 of us related. So it's kind of been nice to do that as they get older.
No kidding. Yes. And those are going to be what you're going to treasure the most, those memories, and what they're going to treasure, and look back and say, you know what, that summer we did half that stuff on my little task list, and it was just amazing. And we forget the value of quality time and how important it is, and especially now with COVID, I think it makes things a little easier to have that quality time, because we're having to relook how we do things for sure, And speaking of COVID, I know this is a little bit of a different question. How is this affecting you with your hockey and how we're going to be going forward with the playoffs?
Yeah, it's affected me immensely. I first of all, for 4 months, we had no sports basically. So I worked out of my home and did calls like this, Zoom calls. I mean, things that we never, ever, ever did. A Zoom call was like the last gasp if you had no other alternatives. It seemed like it was for us like terrible TV to be in something like this. And now it's what we do and it's what we continue to do. You know, first off, regarding the playoffs, I still am doing kind of a hosting role, but it's not like it used to be. There's no contact with the players. You don't, you know, we used to be side by side and do interviews, and there's none of that. We get to watch practice, but there's no interaction with coaches or players. So it's come back different. While there was no sports, I did these Zoom calls. And so it was, you know, people would say, are you busy? Or are you know, and I'd say, well, no, not compared to covering playoffs, but yes, compared to what I thought I would be able to do out of my home, because I never did anything out of my home. So, people would say, you're working hard, kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And I'd say, well, I don't know if I'm working hard, but I'm trying hard, because I had to email and text and call and track down people that, you know, both either individually or through the teams. And so it was, not a lot of work, but a lot of time to try and get these Zoom interviews at a time when people are away, you know, and doing their own things with their families, away from the rinks, the football stadiums, the soccer stadiums. So it went way better than I expected, but it is nice to have sports back. Hockey and the MLS soccer's going. Baseball's kind of had some issues with COVID. We're waiting for football. So it's part of many of our lives. So it's nice that it's back and part of it, even though it's, under some different circumstances.
Right, for sure.
It's going to be a memorable year for sure. And you have gotten to stand next to some pretty big name celebrities. Sabrina wants to know who your top 3 interviews were.
Well, you know, it's a great question, and it's funny because we being media, we often will say to someone, what do you remember about that Stanley Cup run, or what sticks out about that final game? And, you know, a lot of times they're just kind of go, they got to think about it. There's many moments. I would say for me, my top 3 are Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, and Tiger Woods. And I know I'm kind of name dropping there, but those would be the 3. Gretzky is because I'm from here, grew up here, watched the Oilers, and have then had the opportunity now to work around the Oilers and see Wayne kind of not as a hockey player anymore, but as a member of the Oilers group. But it was a pleasure. My one Wayne story that, well, there's a couple, but one that sticks out was back in 95, 96, I was working in Winnipeg, and there were a lot of rumors about Winnipeg moving out of town, the Jets leaving Winnipeg, and he was playing with LA, and someone knocked on the door. I was in like a studio, a dressing room, and yeah, come in. And it was Wayne Gretzky, and he pokes in and goes, hey, do you mind if I come in here and take my stick? I'm like, you can come in here and sit on my lap if you want, whatever you want. Like, doesn't matter to me, right? He didn't know, I was from Edmonton, or, I think he might have vaguely known who I was, but he just knew it's a TV guy. He's working in Winnipeg. And he was taping up his stick, and he was asking me questions about Winnipeg and the Jets and the team. And I was just like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. Michael Jordan, I worked in Toronto and was covering basketball, the Toronto Raptors, and he was playing for the Bulls. And back then, it was called the Sky Dome. It's now the Rogers Center. They would drive in underneath the ramp and then get off the bus and walk to the dressing room. And I'm not exactly sure how it happened, but he gets off the bus and it's just myself and my cameraman. And I'm like, my God, there's Michael Jordan. And he's like, well, let's go talk to him. I'm like, okay, and I mean, I was as nervous could be. And I remember walking beside him and interviewing him. It only lasted about a minute 30, but it was just so memorable that I had this basketball and sports icon side by side with me for that minute and a half. And then Tiger Woods, I was in Toronto covering. He was doing kind of an exhibition invitational for one of his sponsors, and had a chance to meet him, loosely speaking, talk to him, interview him. And, that was, I want to say, I think that was like 2001. So he was right at the height of he was bursting onto the scene and being Tiger Woods. So those are the three sort of most memorable, likely because of their names, when it comes to interviews that I've done.
Very
awesome.
And do people come up to you and ask for your autograph? Do people like, oh, that's Gene Principe? Like,
yeah,
celebrity
yeah,
in your own mind,
amazing.
or in our world, or
yeah, it's amazing that they do. And I think what's happened is now I've been hosting Oiler games for 22 years, and they just see you night after night, year after year, season after season. So I think there's a certain kind of comfort level, like they know you, or they feel like they know you. And I'm always a bit embarrassed. Sometimes it's because they can't get the players' autographs, so I'm kind of last choice, but that's fine. I always say too, when if it's a piece of paper or a card or something, I don't mind signing. I'm more than happy to sign anything. But when it's a jersey, I always kind of say, like, are you sure? Like, the jersey to me is different. That's something that's really player eccentric and driven. If they say yes, then I will do it. Some have went, oh, you know what, maybe not. Can you sign this? Or no. So that's fine. I find it very flattering that anybody would ask. And I remember when my kids were young and people would talk to me, there's sort of two conversations. There's one with someone that you know, and then there's one with someone who knows you. And you're kind of going, do I know this person or not? My kids would say, how come these people are talking to you? Where do you know them from? And I'm like, I don't know them. Well, why are they talking to you? And so as they aged a little bit, they figured out that, okay, they just recognize my dad from TV, and that's why they're coming to talk to him. So I always feel like I always try and find the time to spend time with people. It might be 30 seconds, it might be a minute 30, depending on what's available. But they're the ones that help, keep my job. Right. So I think it's important to spend time with them and to, I think, just kind of show some interest in them. How are you? It's not about me. What's going on? Do you play hockey? What do you do for a pastime? So I like that. And I mean, that's kind of who I am. I like to ask questions. Sometimes it's of athletes, and sometimes it's just kind of your everyday people.
Right. That's awesome. That's so cool. I guess before we leave here, ladies, any last questions from you two? No, you're good. Well, then I have one.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Neela, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say a comment. My dad got a photo with Eugene, and he had his winter jacket on, and then he had a jersey over top, so he kind of looked like the Michelin Man. I think that's kind of more what I would be looking for, more photos than autographs. That's just, yeah.
Yeah, photos are now, because of the advent of these phones, you're right. People say, can I get a photo? Can I get a photo? And what I've done is, when I'm at the rink, that's where I get recognized the most. I mean, you got a rink full of hockey fans, and probably almost all of them will recognize you because they're Oiler fans or hockey fans, or a large portion. And so oftentimes I work with sort of someone who kind of shepherds me the right place, the right time, and they often will play the bad guy, because honestly, I would keep doing the selfies and the autographs as long as possible, because it's not that big a deal, but it is to me to try and leave everybody with what they came for. But sometimes he plays the bad guy, right? And says, we got to go. You got to be here at a certain time. And I'm like, sorry, I got to go. I'll try and come back, or maybe I'll see you again, or whatever the case might be. So I do have some help, because, and just to clarify, it's not like I got an hour-long lineup like a Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. But if there's 8 people, I want to try and help 8. If it's 2 or 3 or whatever it is, and sometimes I just don't have the time. I got to be somewhere else. So he ends up making sure that I get to the right place at the right time.
That's amazing. So I have one last question for you. What is something that your viewers and our viewers don't know about you? A little secret that maybe you can divulge, besides because you're pretty open. You share quite a bit.
Yeah, well, I'm quite. I was born and raised and grew up Roman Catholic, and I was an altar boy when I was a kid. From grade 4 to grade 9, I was there and always really enjoyed. We had a team of altar boys, and it was a great experience. And sometimes you get into your teens and into your 20s, and you kind of float away a bit from it. But I've circled back over the last long time, and we go to church. All the time, as much as I can. I go to church on the road when I can. It's an important part of my life. I don't speak a religion a lot because, you know, people have their own religions or don't have religions that they follow or don't follow. But for me, I always feel like when I go to church, I always feel better after than before. And it's something that I really got from my mom. And she was very much a churchgoer and really believed in, you know, having a passion for it. And so it's been kind of passed on to me and on to my kids. They understand. Doesn't make me perfect, doesn't mean that if you go to church you're better than the neighbor who doesn't go, but it's just something that for me just makes me feel better about my life and what I'm doing.
That's amazing. Yes. You know, spirituality, I think, is so important to have in our lives. And whether, you know, some people call it religion, some people call it spiritualism. It's whatever it is. And if that feeds your soul and gets you going, absolutely. I know my in-laws go to the same church as you. And when I was saying this past weekend that we were going to be doing an interview with you, and my mom is Marissa Faccio, and she's like, "Oh, I know Jean. Yeah, I know Jean." Right? You know, like, you know, oh, you're into, you know, and it's like, all right, like, you know, like, I think this is pretty cool. Like, oh, Jean goes to church. Well, you know, like I talk to him all the time, right? I get
exactly.
that accent, but, you know, you know, and so thank you for sharing that with us. I think that's so important. And you're right. People don't really talk about their spirituality, about their faith. And I think if more people did, I think it would be a better place of just connecting, that we all have some certain belief. And when we go forward, I think it really makes the world a better place when we have something to connect with. So thank you, Jean, for sharing.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Well, it's been a really awesome time interviewing you. I think it was a lot of fun. I'm sure the girls had a blast too. I know our husbands and my son were very excited that we were, you know, of course it's Jean. I mean, they were excited that we were, you know, going to have an interview with you. And most of these questions that I had actually came from my son. So thank you for sharing so much. And good luck in the hockey season. Stay safe as you're traveling and going forward, and have a fabulous summer. You take care,
well, vice versa. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the time. Great to meet you via Zoom.
Yes, you take care. All the best. Bye.